Hello and welcome to Stock and Roll, the podcast where we deep dive into the world of equity compensation. Today we have Christian Hyldig with us, an expert in compensation and benefits, financial reporting and LTIP strategies. With years of experience from Aon and Morgan Stanley, Christian brings invaluable insights into the impact of valuations and accounting. Equity compensation is a powerful tool, but accounting for it is no simple task. IFRS2 ensures transparency in costs related to equity programs, yet many companies struggle with valuation techniques and expense recognition. In this episode, we unpack the complexities of IFRS2 and discuss the best practices on navigating this challenging landscape with confidence. Okay. Now we're here on another podcast. Today we are so happy that we have Christian Hyldig here from Aon. You will talk a bit more about yourself, but first of all, just saying that super happy to be able to dig into your extremely competent brain of equity compensation and all the experience that you have. So yeah, to kick things off, would you mind giving a short introduction of yourself and your background?
Yeah, Christian Hyldig. Original a Danish guy, and from Denmark. Back in 2010, I decided to give myself a master in accounting of IFRS2. I started in SharePlan straight after that in 2010, and I have been working in SharePlan since then. I've been working for Computershare, Denmark and UK, and then later Solium and Morgan Stanley, where I was seeing the financial reporting solution in Europe. And now I'm with Aon, have been there for 2 years. In Aon Equity Service is a practice inside Aon where we support clients of everything that's related to their share plan, design, communication, accounting, valuation, etc. We don't support them with the administration. Other people are much better at that, and they have good technology around that. So we will support clients with everything that's not, administration related for their share plans.
Awesome. You've really been around in the various companies and seen a lot of various things, I assume. And so that's
Yeah, it's been very interesting from starting in the Danish market with only servicing the Danish clients, moving out to more international clients, and now, since for the last 6-7 years, only working with global international companies. It's been very, very interesting and really seeing a lot from small private organization with a interesting design of a vesting schedule to fit exactly where they are in their journey, to big multinational companies that have had the same structure in place for 40 years and have absolutely no chance or no, emphasis in want to change this, but actually feeling how those two journeys actually are so different, but at the same time so alike.
Yeah. Is it possible to say, do you like the more established companies that have things in place, or the ones that are messy and younger? And do you have any preferences?
Yeah, as an advisor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, it's. I have to say that it's more fun when there is a lot to go over.
Yeah.
And that means that it's the younger organization or the one that's in a change. Because you don't even need to be young to be in a change. There could be an M&A situation. That can be something where you don't feel no longer that your plan is fit for purpose and you want to change something. Younger organization that still need to find a footprint, of course, has more appetite for that.
Yeah.
As you grow bigger, you might also have local labor laws. You have your local union agreement, stuff like that. That can be a little bit of a blockade for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But no, no younger organization or more, organization that is interested in changing stuff is by far the most fun.
Yeah.
I'm still loving the good old companies that knows exactly what they're doing, and it's just a machine. It's so fascinating sometimes to be part of.
Yeah.
So a little bit of both, but we like a place of action.
Yeah, and I think it's also I guess it's nice to have seen what really works when you also are helping the ones that you have to do a lot of changes on, right? Because then you've seen both of it. Yeah.
No, but definitely having the experience, having seen exactly, as you said, what is working can be so beneficial in a situation where you're sitting with someone. We need sometimes to remember that we see 30, 50, 100 companies in a similar situation. Many of our clients, this is the first share plan they ever work with. They have never seen anything different. Maybe they had a previous job where they saw another one, but it's something like that. Maybe they want to enter into France. They have never have employees in France. They have no idea what it is. They just hear it as a high tax. And so this we need sometimes to remember that even a little knowledge with us is huge in front of the client. Because for them, they only know what they have in front of them. They only know what they have seen for some of them, where we can bring so much more to the table, giving our experience and giving our various solution we know about. Because a share plan is not only a share plan. There is different ISOs in North America. There is ShareSafe in UK. We're sitting in Spain right now. There's the 12,000 exception rule. If you apply it the right way, there are so many ways to make this fit the organization and fit what the organization wants to do. And it's about understanding that. And some of the ways that you can bring something on the table is to what you have seen. The more you have seen, the more you sort of can bring to the table.
I sense that we could do many episodes.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, definitely. So today's topic, we will start on first scratch the surface a bit on IFRS2 valuations and kind of the accounting part of equity programs. That is a huge topic, so we can kind of also do a lot more. But if we start off a bit like, what is IFRS2? Why do we need this? And kind of very high level for people that haven't really done too much of it before.
Very high level, and let's also look a little bit of the history. IFRS 2 was introduced in 2004, so it's been around for some time now. It was introduced as an overreaching, accounting standard for international companies, because there was lack of accounting standard. There was a big lack of accounting standard. In US, under US GAAP, they had tried for many years to introduce something very similar. They were also breaking through around the same time. So because before that, it was a little bit, let's call it the Wild Wild West. It was a little bit, there was no clear guidelines. You could issue option as par value, so basically exercise price equal share price. And then you could just say we use the intrinsic value, in this case is 0. You gave someone 1 million options. 0 multiplied with 1 million is still 0. So the cost or the expense is 0. And that was like, it's not like money grows on tree. So there was like from the accounting, agency, from the accounting, government body, there was like, this is not true. Something needs to change. We need to be able to reflect this benefit. We need to reflect this in the accounting records. Else, this is not a true picture. So they came in basically saying that at grant date, for, let's say, equity settled, cash settled is a little bit of a different story. But for equity settled units, you need to calculate a fair value, and you cannot use intrinsic value anymore unless in some very limited scenarios, but it's almost impossible to get to that because of a step tree. But you need to calculate a fair value, and the fair value you need to do different models, like approved model. Black-Scholes ended up taking to be the majority in the beginning. A lot of companies tried with binomial model or Monte Carlo, but binomial model, there was a lot of them, but they were not really that effective, and it was hard to recreate the result. Monte Carlo, you can recreate result within a certain area. Black-Scholes is what is called a closed formula. It will always give you the same result. When you put in the same parameter, it will always give you the same result, and it will always give you a value. You cannot get 0. You can get something very close to 0, but you cannot get 0. So suddenly you started to expensing it. Suddenly you started to, when you issue an options, RSU, whatever type of share plan, you would start to have an accounting expense. So that was sort of like the history. That was why they did it. There have been a few amendments since then to cater for change in design, or maybe something that was not clear. Something about what we do in mobility scenarios, something what we do in some other complex scenarios, but else that was the whole intent. It was to be able to reflect the cost of share plan, or at least the perceived cost of the share plan, and in the annual report.
And if I understand correct, so to your start, that basically means that if it was a company, let's say 100 people working there, everyone were shitloaded of cash. Basically means they don't need any salary. They could get like only options in kind of in salary, employee stock options, and then before it could have been a way where it looked like the company had 0 salary kind of costs, but this is a way of trying to make that into some realistic cost, a realistic value of what sort of benefit do the employee get, and kind of finding a way to to unpeel the onion and finding out what is the actual value of it, right?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that is exactly was the scenario, because you want to avoid that type of scenario, and you had some back then. There was some quite bad media press about some scenarios, especially in North America, where something almost very similar to that happened, or maybe just for the CEO or the CFO happened. To display the real, sort of like the idea about it.
Correct.
Similar to how you would do any like normal cash bonus, salary, free car, whatever. What is the cost of running this place? What is the cost for the employee?
Yeah, and when you mention Black-Scholes binomial models and Monte Carlos, there's just different tools of kind of setting that value based on what sort of like equity instrument you get, right? If I understand correctly.
Yeah, that's true. That is exactly, it's a different model. You can close to always use Monte Carlo in a scenario, but Monte Carlo will often also be the most costly model to run for any organization, because it often require external support, and it's time consuming, stuff like that. Binomial is a little bit easier to get away with, but you have more flexibility. But then again, if you have flexibility, you also need to understand the flexibility, because maybe the auditor will come and ask you, what did you do? Why did you do it? And then the last one is the Black-Scholes. The Black-Scholes is a very simple model, and Black-Scholes don't fit all scenarios. No. Like sometimes you need to go up the tree. Sometimes you need to be in the Monte Carlo, for example, if you have TSR performance or share price performance, what is defined as a market-based performance rule. You need to be in that space, or you need to go up. You can no longer rely only on Black-Scholes. There is a little bit in IFRS2 where they're defining what parameters they need to be in the model. They all fit into a Black-Scholes, but they're also a little bit. There was some discussion back then. Should they recommend Black-Scholes or not recommend Black-Scholes? And they were sort of like they didn't really want to do it. You can clearly see in the business for basis for conclusion. But they ended up saying that it's okay.
And you have to kind of apply the practical parts of it as well, right?
Exactly, and actually in one of the later update about net settlement in IFRS2, they actually also make a judgment exactly that, making that argument to say that it needs to be practical. They were like, if we're following the accounting standard exactly how it's written and how it was envisioned back then, it would be really, really complicated to do accounting for plans with net settlement. So they made a little bit of a practical approach to say that if you only do net settlement for X, Y, Z reasons, you can just follow the simple approach, because the benefit for any users will not even be close to the cost of you to maintain and running this stuff.
No, 100%.
So but once again, we are in IFRS 2. It's a standard of 53 or something like that, clauses, and of course some appendix and stuff like that. If we go across the bond to Atlantic, you have like ASC 718, that is like line by line, this is what you do in this scenario, this is what you do in this scenario, this is what you do right here. Where they're much more, you need to follow it by the dot, where we are a little bit more free to make assumptions.
Is it fair to say, if we try to kind of say that if it's an employee stock option, with just like, okay, a strike you have to pay in the future, there's a time with the vesting and this expiry part of it. If it's that simple, you can call it plain vanilla, then you would typically apply a Black-Scholes.
Definitely. That would be a Black-Scholes for.
And if you add, just kind of to trying to exemplify it, if you also say that in order to exercise that option, meaning buying that share at a price that is lower than what the market price is, and it's vested, if you added in saying that you also need to beat the share price growth of a competing company, or a goal of your own share price, or some peers or whatever, then you have to move on to
the more complex model, because you need to, as I said, you can no longer use a closed formula to only look at your own performance. You need to include basically the projected performance of these organizations.
That's awesome. If we're going to kind of delve one step deeper, looking a bit at that kind of market-based part, or kind of this kind of share price, beating a share price, beating a peer part as well, like what would you say is the challenges of this, and also in terms of the valuation? Like you have that part and kind of the vesting and other conditions, just like high level as well. What's the biggest challenges?
Exactly. It will be that we move towards some Monte Carlo valuation. It will be the move that we move toward a more complex valuation that start to be the the tricky part about this is that you will not get the same result every time you run it. So we are no longer saying that the value is 6.2.
Yeah.
We will say that the value is 6.2, but then if you test it, you might get 6.1 or 6.3 or something like that. But you need to be within the frame. So you need to be able to understand that it's not always the same, which for some people can be quite tricky because it's like the share price is 10. Why is it not 10? All the parameters is the same.
Yeah.
But some of the tricky part to do, like if we say that we have let's call it a TSR plan, that's one of the more popular, what could you say, market-based performance plan for executive, always been a favor for ISS and Black-Scholes and other proxy advisor.
Yeah.
That will be the peer group. How is the peer group defined? And there's different. This is also a little bit about design decision to be made by the company, how to design this. But there's like doing corporate dividend. How to incorporate dividend?
Yeah.
Is it reinvested? Is it reinvested at ex-dividend day? Is it reinvested at payment day?
Yeah.
Is it accumulated? So it's not reinvested, but accumulated until the end. There's so many small features, and you need to understand the plan, and you need to understand the peers in the plan. That's like an average period. So you say that we have an average period of maybe the performance base period is like a month or 3 months before.
Yeah.
And then you need to test up against a month or 3 months in the future. All these elements is something that you need to include in your valuation and need to embed. There's also, you mentioned volatility before, maybe you're a relatively young organization, you're not being traded that long.
Yeah.
So do you have enough volatility? Maybe you don't have enough volatility, so you need to do a peer group volatility or maybe a implied volatility.
Yeah.
And this is some element. Maybe you need to do weighting. Maybe you need to do a weighting between a peer group volatility implied and your own.
Yeah.
To get to where the volatility is. One of the key has to be consistent. So not do something 1 year, do something else another year, then do something the third year. Yeah. Be consistent on your approach. Of course, you cannot continue for 30 years using peer group volatility. At some point, you have enough trading to do it yourself.
Yeah.
But around the market-based condition, it is the complicated part is to understand. Another one is like, is it a fixed currency or is it local currency? Working with a Scandinavian company, they're listed in kroners.
Yeah.
All the pairs are euros and kroners, but it could be Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, or sterling or US dollars.
Yeah.
So are we now testing the performance of this organization in the local currency?
Yeah.
Or are we doing it in, let's say, Danish kroners for that matter? Or are we doing it in euros?
Yeah.
Because we say the majority of the peers in euros. So, and I know this is not in the valuation, but I'm just going to say that this impact, we had a client and we did this exercise for them at payout. And they went from local kroner to fixed euro.
Yeah.
And it was the difference between 0 payout and 100% payout.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah.
Just
So then it's
that
currency.
one change the currency fluctuation.
Yeah.
So it can impact quite a lot.
Yeah.
And you really, really don't want to sit on the last day, a week before, and have to make that decision. Because there's also a bias in that decision is that a week before, the likelihood of the person making the final decision will get this program quite high.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So that person might have a bias towards one decision versus another one. Once again, you made a decision, just stick with it forward. Keep that decision. Yeah. Don't worry about what it looked like the next year. No, but around the market-based performance, we're moving into a complex area. We're moving into an accounting complex area because this will also impact accounting. Yeah. Some of these elements, not all of them, but some of these elements will also impact accounting. So it is important that it's documented early when you're doing the design and thinking about all these strange scenario. You have never paid dividends, so why should we consider dividend? Yeah, maybe your peers pay dividends, so you should consider dividend.
Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that that you need to embed into your valuation model because it's part of your plan, but you need to think about it before you can get it into your valuation.
Yeah. So one question we often get when it comes into like the valuation part is the time element, because I think that's also, even if it's a simple option or if it's like whatever kind of instrument. So how would you kind of think, because there's something which is vesting date. You have to be there until X in order to earn the rights to buy or whatever. And there's something called an expiry date.
Yeah.
Which of these are you using into the valuation, or are there anything in between?
Yeah, that will often be somewhere in between. If we're talking about complex modeling, so we can use either Monte Carlo, or we can actually also use some binomial models. You can embed this into your model. So you can say that, for example, if the share price goes to a certain level, after the vesting, of course, we need to pass the vesting. But if we say that if the share price goes to a certain level, we expect exercise. 2x, 3x, something. So you can embed that in the model. Often, if you're brand new, you don't have any history, it's coming a little bit out of some US guidance, I have to admit it, you will use what is called a midpoint. So the vesting period plus midpoint between vesting and expiry, use that. That is sort of an accepted way of doing it when you don't have any history. When you start to have history, you can start to look at how your employee navigate this. Do they exercise very early? Do they exercise very late? Can also depend a little bit about what type of exercise have you defined. Because if you set an exercise as a premium, so let's say 15% over the current share price, they might exercise a little bit later because we need to go to that place. If your option is a UK nominal option at 1 cent, they're close to free. So as soon as you're over that 3-year period, and I know you have, let's say, 7 year up to the 10 year to exercise, a lot of people will just take them as an RSU and just take them straight out. So we see client with that setup that have what could you say, expected terms or expected length unlisted for you, even though it's a 10-year plan, because they're like, come on, it's more or less free units. People, they have to pay like a few cents to get the units, so they will do that. So it's a little bit, you need to look at the plan, you need to look where you are. It's called expected term, and it's an assumption you as a company, as management set, or when do we expect our participant to exercise. If you want to follow IFRS2 strict by the law, you actually also need to look at your employee base, because generally theories say that executive will exercise later than lower staff, and there can also be some regional differences. Like in some jurisdiction, participants have a tendency to exercise earlier than other. Also a little bit about the culture. Do we know what an option is and not an option is? So that'll be that. I will say one thing, we generally don't see it, but it has been around in the past. So if you have the capability of selling your option, but not exercising it. Very special scenario. I have seen a few German plans lately with it, but else it's been really, really rare lately. It's expiry date. Then you use the full term because Black-Scholes and all valuation models, they work with value in time. So then the assumption is that you will not exercise them, but you will actually sell them. And then it's full term. But it's really rarely. But in theory, it's there.
What I've always found a bit like challenging with this part is the logic. Because you could say, if you started to work in our company and you received an option with a vesting date 1 year from now, expiry in 10 years, just to kind of do an long, for you, that would be a good deal because you're able to exercise it early and you can wait for quite a long time. So it's a flexible option. Accounting wise, we could then argue to say vesting plus 1 year, vesting plus 2 years. Suddenly we have like a 3 year of expected time. If we move the vesting date all the way to 9 years, so you have only 1 year part there, that would be for you less attractive, right? But in the valuation part, because of the expected time would then be 9.5 year, it would be a more expensive, costly. So that is sometimes a bit counter-effective. Do you kind of ever experience these kind of dialogues, or is that...
I can see the point. It's quite an interesting one. It is about, in this case, to be honest, no, we don't see that. We don't see that. I can see the argument from a theoretical point of view. The conversation is there, but it's really rarely we see that because most organizations already have like a 3 year or 5 year.
Vesting. That's the important thing, right?
Relatively structured for many reasons. Maybe if they're a farmer, they have like one monthly vesting or something like that. So it's rarely we get to that point.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. The argument, of course, is that the share price value at that point will be very high, but actually also with a very narrow window of exercising the risk of you being in a down period.
Yes,
it's also there.
Yeah.
So it is from a valuation point of view. It is. There's another interesting point is that the Black-Scholes. I don't know maybe if you're covering this, but there's like what's called European and American option and Bermuda options.
Yeah.
And Black-Scholes is actually assuming exercise on the last date.
Yeah.
Which is from memory the European one.
Yeah.
Or the American, I cannot remember. Yeah. Where we are, of course, not granting option with that clause.
No.
We are granting option. And this is a little bit, as I said before, if you have the opportunity to sell and resell the option, we are granting option that can be exercised over a window, so closer to actually Bermuda.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
But it's the best tool we have out there. There's a reason why he got the Nobel Prize. That they got the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
And especially in the early days of the, as I said, the US standard also, and IFRS2 came in, and there was a little bit wild west of what model to use. It all got centralized about using Black-Scholes, and companies, providers out there started to embed the Black-Scholes in their tools for company to use it for valuation. A private company came up with these monthly vesting, and they used this tool. So it clearly took off. We see sometimes organizations using binomial and is happy with it.
Yeah.
Then maybe they are in a situation where somebody's leaving, they want to change the plan, and they have a hard time actually finding someone to support them with that afterwards inside the organization, and they now need to take the binomial outside, where it starts to be costly to them.
Yeah.
And some of them simply just default back to Black-Scholes and make a note to say they have changed their approach. Result was the same, something like that.
Yeah. I guess it's like the point here is like how to find a pragmatic, good, efficient way of doing your best estimate to find the value of something. It's like you can always dive into a rabbit hole and make it into the most advanced stuff in the world, but it's not really scalable, right?
No, it's not scalable, and it's not. It's of course bringing a value to be accurate. We need to remember that we always need to be as precise as we can.
Yeah.
But it's not always practical.
No.
Say, and it's about making some of these real changes, about making, and also if you do like a peer group volatility, 5-10 companies, and many tools and many other situations, they say also provider, they will say we weight them all the same. 10 companies, 10% each.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
But then when you look at it, maybe you look at this person, oh, wait a minute, one of them is actually only half, and this one is has double impact. So maybe this one should actually have 15%, and this one should have 5%.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't really do it, because does it actually impact?
No.
But
I think that what is quite important and interesting with this field here is that if you do a thorough job, if you understand it, of course you have to do it the right way, because you will be asked by your auditors. But it's actually possible, if you're conscious here, to make sure that at least you don't have higher costs than what you should have. So I'm not kind of encouraging people to get it as low as possible. No. But this is a way where it's actually possible to do a good job and to make sure that you have not higher costs than what you should have. If you just do boilerplate, don't really care, you may end up in having higher costs that you should have.
Yeah. No, exactly. And then again, it's about understanding the feature that's in the plan, and how some of these features can change your fair value. We talked a little bit about if you have performance criteria around market-based. One of the things we see coming up in this region quite a lot is what is referred to as holding period. When I say this region, I mean Europe. It comes out quite a lot from the banking industry. This is CDI, something I don't remember what it's called, introduced that bankers need to hold the units for a certain amount of time, and they sort of start to spill out and also be a really good way to manage clawback and malus.
Yeah, the CRD 3-4.
Exactly. But we also, and they started in the banking on also other stages with the clawback and malus, but now we see it more and more coming out. So you do an executive plan, it's a 3-year vesting of something, and then you have a 2-year holding period.
Yeah.
that 2-year holding period is quite interesting from an accounting point of view.
Definitely.
Because there's this restriction of trading. It's a little bit as we talked about before with the 9-year plan. It's like it's a restriction where you cannot do anything. You have the units, they're not transferred to you.
Yeah.
But you cannot you cannot sell them. You cannot change them to cash. You cannot go down buy milk and stuff like that with your company options or company shares. That restriction or lack of marketability, as it also referred to in the industry, that can create a discount in your fair value. And this is something we unfortunately see a lot of organizations not aware of. It's like, let's say 10% reduction of fair value.
Yeah. That reduces your costs with 10%, right?
Yeah.
So your salary costs related to it.
Is the cost to go down with 10%. It's a little bit of caveat to say that it's only on, because when you do it, there will be a withhold to cover.
Yeah.
On the release, some of the stuff will be sold to cover tax.
Yeah.
So they are not restricted. They are sold. So it's what you remain to receive. If you have a 40% tax rate, the 60% you receive. Of those 60%, let's say 10% discount. Company, unfortunately, aware of it. Sometimes it happens with you have this Excel model run in the company, which is perfectly fine. I have worked for many years.
Yeah.
But then this rule came in, organization, they tried to add a few bits and pieces, and the model was still working. It was producing a fair value. Nothing changed. But there was not an awareness of this additional element actually could reduce the fair value.
Yeah.
And have interesting conversation about it. US generally, they are not that open to taking the discount, I will say, but under IFRS, there's a much bigger appetite. I will say if you're a high volatile company, this can also be a lot more than 10%.
Yeah.
But generally around 7, 10%, 11%.
Yeah.
For most of these plans. And as I said, it's a really, really good way to reduce.
Yeah, it is.
Normally, you would have holding on CEO, CFO, and a few others.
Yeah.
That is also the one that get quite a lot of units.
Definitely. So yeah, 100%.
So you get a lot for your money when you remember to include this. It often can be modeled as a pot option.
Yeah.
Not always, but sometimes you need to do something else. But it's actually often a pot option in the end. But I feel it's a thing one, and it's something, as I said, where we see a. I was about to call it benefit. That's not correct. But we see a way of reducing a fair value that is utilized in the plan design. Yeah. But it's not utilized in the valuation.
And those things is kind of, obviously, if you run a big plan, it can have quite an effect on your, basically, the company's perceived performance when you do the annual report, right? So these things eventually can have some effect. Of course, dependent on size and everything, but it's, but yeah.
Depends on everything, but it's always important also, when you're sitting and running this type of plan, you will be asked how much does it cost.
Yeah.
Not often. I don't know if external, but at least internal, you will have an idea.
Yeah.
And so it is important to understand these features. Can talk about another one. We also see one quite common in US, relatively common in US, but not that much in Europe yet. But I have a feeling some of this stuff is what is called absolute value cap. So basically saying that this one cannot pay out more than 6 times the grand value.
Yeah.
So 100,000 euros in grand value, it cannot pay out more than 600,000.
Yeah.
If it's more than 600, we basically just cut it at 600 or 400,000 or whatever it is. And there's different ways of doing this. Once again, accounting value or share price value or something else. Yeah. But that's creating an interesting scenario because when you then do your modeling, you're basically saying that every time the share price go over this level, we cut it.
Yeah.
And that once again bring down the fair value.
Yeah.
And some organization also makes the argument. So once again, the plan get cheaper to run. You can say 6 times up. I know executive love unlimited gain.
Yeah.
That's what they drive for. That's what they want. So unlimited gain is something they always want. Yeah. But if you communicate it well, you can make an argument to say 5x might be enough. So we cap it at 6. Yeah. You once again reduce your fair value. You could make an argument in a retention situation that you're not paying out that much. Yeah. So people starting to be at risk of basically just saying, okay, I have enough money, I go live on an island or something like that. But no, that is an interesting another one element that you can include in that is a design feature that not always get to the accounting valuation.
I think it's like a fair thing to say that like all things in your plan documents that can affect your potential payout or the value of what you get in shares in any ways should be evaluated, at least if you should take it into the valuation part. Because obviously any restrictions, if it's, as you say, a cap or a break or any kind of performance criteria or changes or so, it can be modeled. And of course you could know if you want to kind of use it, but the most correct thing is to include it in the model, right? So it's great. I think then we've kind of touched quite a lot on the valuation part. We could, of course, continue, and I feel that I have tons of questions that I want to continue on, but obviously understanding that But again, moving on. So now we have the value.
Yeah.
What do we do with that? Do we just book it immediately? Can we spread it over time? What do you do with the value?
Yeah. You have a fair value. You know how many units you are giving. You have a fair value per unit. You know how many units you are planning to allocate to to your group or to the people.
Yeah.
And then it's about multiplying those two. You get a total value, and that is then once again depending of design, but general rule spread over time.
Yeah.
3-year vesting spread over 3 years.
Yeah.
That's sort of like the very simple one. Again, there's a lot of small caveats in relation to you can use it for feature rate to reduce how much is the total fair value, stuff like that. But I think there might be feel for we can also once again get very details in that. But there is way of adjusting that. Yeah. In the end, you will have expense according to IFRS2 the exact amount that was paid out, at least if it's everything that's not market, or non-market or service condition.
Yeah.
So you spread it over time. It's graded on IFRS, meaning that if you have a plan where a portion invests after 1 year, something after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you will take the full of the first one in the first year, half of the second one in the first year also, a third of the third one, and a quarter in the last one. So you will actually have almost 52% in the first year, and then lower, very different from a US straight line where you basically take 25, 25, 25, 25.
Yeah.
And everything's graded under IFRS. Very important, very big different from US GAAP.
Yeah.
US GAAP also allow graded, but it's just a big difference.
Yeah.
And if there's performance plan in the US, it needs to be graded, but that's a completely different story.
Yeah.
But looking at under IFRS. So it will be over that time. If we go back to a little bit of the complex one, if it is market, let's say you have a market-based criteria to say the unit vest when the share price triple. You need to be employed until that point, but else there's no time restriction. There's none to say it needs to be after a certain period. When you do your modeling, when you get the fair value, you will also get an expected timing of when that is happening, and then you expense it over that period.
Yeah. So expected time to
expected, and what is it called? Is it implied vest date or something? I don't even remember what it is.
Yeah.
I think it's implied vest date, at least under US GAAP, because there's no term for it under IFRS.
Yeah.
We just use the same term.
Yeah.
And then you will use that, disregarding whether or not it's correct.
Yeah. So here's like you have the value, and you're actually supposed. So the practical approach to it, you have a value, you have a total cost, and the point is to spread it over the time where you render service to the company to achieve what you kind of get.
Yeah.
And as you say, then you say if it's 1/3 annually, then the first tranche is actually done in 1 year, and the second in 2, and the last one in 3. What if you leave after 1.5 years?
Yeah. If you leave after 1.5 years, IFRS2 is relatively strict in that sense, or you say that everything happened post-vest, we don't care.
Yeah.
More or less. Or that's actually the general rule. So the first, out of your example, one third. The first one has vested.
Yeah.
Fully the employee.
Yeah.
Cost has been allocated. Everything is happy. But the second one, you will, let's just say we can, and everything is just forfeited immediately because there could be proration rules. But let's just say everything is forfeited.
Yeah.
So the cost you have allocated for the second tranche and the third tranche will then be reversed back into P.
Yeah. For the first tranche, that will be kept, right? What if the share price drops and you never exercise the option? Do you get it back or?
Bad luck, surely, boy.
Yeah.
Everything happens after this, we don't care.
Yeah.
So it's the same rule. So the expense has been allocated, the service has been rendered.
Yeah. what if, now I'm trying to be the difficult customer here, what if we say that everything vests in 3 years, you see that it will remain out of the money, a lot out of the money, basically means that the strike price is 100, but we're at 10.
Yeah.
And then when it's 1 month left of the 3 year, you decide to cancel the plan because you don't want to pass that 3 year. Is it any way to get rid of those costs that you already accrued, or what happens then?
You just won 1 month extra cost.
Yeah.
Because it's a company's cancel plan.
Yeah.
It's the service has been rendered. So the cost stays.
Yeah.
There's no change. You can do a replacement grant. You can get a little bit back. There's a few flexibility around that.
Yeah.
But if you just straight out cancel it, it basically lost. You have taken the full cost. Employees will not get a benefit, anything. And if it is, even though it's quite low, because I will say I work with organization that was way out of the money, like actually very similar to your example, but just let's say it was a different number. It was like 880, but anyway. And in the last quarter, before they expired, they got into the money.
Yeah.
Out of that 10 year. Yeah. Everybody was panicking because nobody expected it to happen. Yeah. But in the last quarter, after they published the quality report, a window opened for exercise, and they were all in the money.
Yeah.
Organization in that, let's say you grant a few years in a row and everything just is mainly underwater.
Yeah.
Some organization will look into themselves to say, do we still want to grant options? Because it's a bad message to sell. So maybe you go to full awards or RSUs, for example, and then you will start granting RSUs, at least so you have a positive message for some time. Generally, what's seen in the market is that if you have that scenario you explained like that, you basically just
there already. Will be the same as if you buy a lottery ticket, you don't win, and you want the money back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting scenario. But no. So you will just let them run and let them basically let them expire.
And you rather grant something new, right?
And then you grant some. Maybe you grant compensation a little bit higher amount that you would have done alternatively to use as a retention tool. I know it's a little bit outside the technical, but there's also some options you can do in relation to what is referred to as a repricing on exchange that you go in and start to work with a little bit of that. But that can implement like security law. It could be a tax law. That would be modification accounting for sure.
Yeah.
And also ISS and Glass Lewis will also have a say about what you do and not do.
Yeah.
So there's some things you can do if you feel that your pool is dry.
Yeah.
You have used your entire pool. Not entire pool, but you're quite low on your pool.
Yeah.
And so you don't have replacement capability.
Yeah.
So there's some options to do it in that sense.
Cool.
Once again, it depends on your plan rules, what they allow for, not allow for. Security law, tax law, modification. It's a big one. If you're listed in US, you might need to do a tender.
Yeah.
It's a whole episode.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, because I just thought the same as well. You just mentioned repricing and you mentioned proxy advisor voting, right? I think both those are two excellent candidates for other episodes as well. So before jumping off the IFRS 2 train, I would like to kind of ask, like, are there any of the... Is it common that IFRS and cost-related topics should be considered when you design the program? Are there, and if so, are there any typical top-of-mind topics that you think these things you need to remember when you design?
Yeah, it's a classic question. It's like, who should be on the table when you design a plan?
Yeah.
Legal, HR. Always recommend the financial reporting, or at least the reporting team, to be there to be open for do some assessment. There's a few elements when designing a plan that seems logical and seems like something an organization would like to do that simply don't work from an accounting point of view. One of the classic is what is called a choice plan. So the choice between something. So you, if you are designing a plan, you might want to give your employee the choice between, do you want to receive cash or equity in the end? It seems very logical. It's a benefit similar to a cash bonus. In the end, do they want to be shareholders or do they just want the cash? It was done quite a lot in the past, but then came IFRS 2. put a hard stop to that.
Yeah.
If you do this, there's a little bit about who can make the choice. Is it the company or is it the employee?
Yeah.
Company, a little bit more simple. If it's the employee, it's just something we don't see. When we don't see it, I know of one huge UK company that have a choice plan.
Yeah.
But else people generally don't see it. Because it creates a scenario where you need to account for both the cash element and the equity element as a combined instrument. So it's really, really complicated. And I've had numerous conversations with organizations where they were like, let's just give people the choice. It sounds so good and makes so much sense, but accounting just don't do it. It's just simply don't do it. So no, that is one of the real classic to avoid. One of the things to avoid is to changing the plan. So if you want to change the plan, it's you don't want to change the plan of a live plan. So if something is running, of course, if it's completely unfit for purpose due to an M&A or something like that, you might need to do this, or share price drop, you need to reset some goal. That can be a scenario where this is very, very valid.
Yeah.
But if there's like nuances you just want to change, it's really recommended not to do it when the plan is running, because it will often trigger modification accounting. Yeah. So instead, next round. Next year when you're granted, let's make sure we have the new good ideas included, and then move forward with that. And the old one that is running on live, they will be run with the other term. Unless, as I said, there are really good reason for it. There can be really good reason for it. But generally, if you want to change small things, then just let it flow. And then do that. So
I guess here it's like if it's intended to be settled in equity, then you're allowed to basically do the fair value calculation at time zero. You don't change it. But if it's an equity part, then you have to recalculate every time, and it's uncertain. It's a volatile part of how much you actually have to put into your bookings. And that's a thing that you don't really want, or you can want it if things go down, but generally it's creating unpredictability, right?
Yeah, generally you want to avoid exactly, because it creates volatility in your books. It's costly to do. If you do this in Excel, risk for errors is just too big. And then there's a lot, we talked about, you asked about the design before. Also, one client working with some time ago, they came up with a massive plan. So like there was a really, really interesting share price target and a lot of other targets, one big mix of multipliers, stuff like that, with a huge amount of units. Really, really, they also needed something for many reasons, so to drive some performance. And they got pretty much everybody involved, and then they actually came to me and went, hey, Christian, can you help us do a Monte Carlo valuation of this design to just have an estimation of where we're landing cost-wise? Of course we can, and we did this, and we got it back to them. And they were like, they sort of had envisioned like $25 million per year. Because we're a bit about that. And that actually could take them into negative territory. So that will change from a black to red number. So finance ended up shooting it down. Finance ended up saying that we can see where you want to go. We can see what you're trying to do, but this plan is too costly right now for what you want to do. So, and they are looking at doing something different now with reduced number of units and different targets and stuff like that. But it was stretched target. I have to say, it was not something that was easy to reach. It was really, really stretched target. But it was just when you took it to a valuation model, it still come back with a value. And therefore it was just way too expensive from where they believed they would land on this type of plan. So sometimes it could be surprising, and a lot of the people that were involved in this design had huge experience in the field, not specifically valuation, but in designing and being part of this and understanding what is good from retention value and all that stuff. So get accounting in or valuation early, at least also just to set some levels in relation to how much do we actually want to.
100%. I have one example as well that it's where this is quite a long time ago, but it was a company that, of course, you have tax when you get shares, and they weren't really sure of the liquidity of their share, so they wanted to kind of avoid a lot of sales into the market when they did the design. So they were smart. They thought making 50% would be in equity. The other 50 would be settled in cash, which of course then you can pay your tax bill. Of course, you have tax again on that kind of part, so it's not 100%, but ish. What happened then? Let's say that the share price at start was 10. This was a company that grew a lot. It turned into 1,000. Just to kind of give some, it was an extreme growth case, and during that growth, right, the cash part of this program was just getting more and more and more expensive, and it really made their figures red because it was such a big driver, right? So it's just about, like, of course they would have been happy if the share price gone down, of course not happy because of that, but isolated because of this. But I think that part, again, just understanding when you design, when you do some sensitivity calculations, just check how will this hit if this and this and this scenario. I think that is, like, just to kind of emphasize your point, get someone from finance into it quite early, just to understand your consequences, right?
No, exactly. It's the modeling. It's doing a model, but and also not just doing a model of what we think could happen. Like, let's be extreme. Let's be really extreme in all ends.
Yeah.
And it's the same. When we support client in rolling out like an ESPP or any other, it's like, okay, how many of your employees do you think will contribute to this plan? And they give it like 35% or something like that. Perfect. How much US dollars? 800 or something like that. We put that in. Okay. Let's say it's 60.
Yeah.
And let's say 1,200.
Yep. I agree.
Do you still like that number?
Yeah. No, 100% agree. I think that's super smart. Yeah. No, we're great. I think we've covered, like, the high level elements, and a bit also down to some of the deep elements on the valuations and also on the IFRS part. I think it's relevant because these topics are so big that it may be that we deep dive even further in a later episode. But I think we should say that we're happy with what we've covered today. It's been a pleasure having you, Christian. Would like to continue for a long time, but let's do that later. So, remains just to say thanks a lot.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a really good conversation and some, really interesting examples. So
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.